120 years ago, one disease in particular threatened Germany. A disease that was responsible for killing 1 in 7 of all human beings. Tuberculosis.
It's a disease that's passed by coughing or sneezing. Germs get in the air, and in crowded conditions, it passes from person to person very easily.
Die Hygiene war damals natürlich auch nicht.
Hygiene back then wasn't like today, of course. If there was a toothbrush at all in a working-class household, it was used by the whole family. So many people infected their children with tuberculosis without even knowing it.
Kinder unwissentlich mit Tuberkulose angesteckt.
For over a century, it was the biggest cause of death across the whole of Europe and the United States. At the time, there was no cure, and 80% of the infected would eventually die.
TB was not really treatable in the sense that there was a cure for it. What people tried to do was create a healthier environment for people with tuberculosis. And the idea was, it's a lung disease, it has something to do with air. Let's get them out of the city, out to where there's fresh air, dry air. It was very common for rich people to be able to get sent off to one of these hospitals in some lovely mountainous setting. But many of the victims of tuberculosis weren't affluent. They couldn't afford that.
So a new kind of facility was needed. Beelitz Heilstätten was the answer. Its aim was to provide cutting-edge care in a healthy setting, not for the very rich, but the very poor.
An insurance company was behind the building of this sanatorium. They wanted to create this model clinic for workers in Berlin who had limited access to treatment otherwise.
But would it work? Would a patient coming from the squalor of Berlin actually be helped in a sanatorium like this?
For people who lived in very crowded conditions, they were, many of them, factory workers. They didn't have a lot of money. They might not have had a lot of people at home who could take care of them in their sick condition. So to be able to go to this lovely retreat, even as their prognosis for getting better wasn't that great, it must have seemed like a kind of blessing.
Building begins in 1898, and the initial construction phase takes 4 years. The intricate ornamental facades and the light, spacious rooms were a stark contrast to the conditions the workers were used to back in the cities.
What's really kind of lovely is that they designed it to feel like a resort, like a beautiful country town. I think the respect they showed to these sick people who were not affluent, who weren't paying their own way, was really something admirable.
But with the threat of World War I looming, there was a dark secret that lay at the heart of this generosity.
The Kaiser was simply afraid of the inability of some of his people to serve in the military. Also, the economy would have lost its cheap labourers. That was the real reason behind the construction of this sanatorium.
Eventually, there would be beds for 1,200 patients, which made it one of the largest sanatoriums in the world. And it would go on to house one of the world's biggest killers of the 20th century.